Good day. I'm Dr. Lisa, the President and CEO of Parents Anonymous, Inc., one of the oldest family strengthening organizations in America, headquartered in Los Angeles. We were started in 1969 with the idea that people needed a way to reach out and get help. Parents, kids, youth. We started a national parent helpline in 1969, and during COVID, we launched the California Parent Youth Helpline, which is the only helpline of its kind in our whole state. So whatever your problem is, whatever your issue is, you can call us, you can text us at 855-427-2736, or live chat us on our website, caparentyouthhelpline.org. And you can call us as much as you want. You can call us because you're worried about a neighbor's kid. You're worried about your own children, your grandchildren, your nephews, your nieces. We're here to provide that emotional support because we believe that asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And May is Mental Health Acceptance Month. We've moved in the field between the word of awareness, so you're aware of the idea of depression, but your child gets diagnosed with depression, or you feel super anxious. Then it hits you personally and you say, how can I create change? So acceptance is about calling people to action and taking it out of the closet, which is why we call our podcast Breaking the Stigma. Because people feel so blamed and shamed and judged, they don't want to tell anybody. They're feeling a little more than just sort of sad today, or they think they might be going back into using drugs or doing other kinds of behaviors that's not feeding them in a positive way. So I'm really glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
OG, so please introduce yourself. And
Definitely. I'm OG Suicide. I'm a suicide survivor. Now I'm an activist for suicide awareness and prevention. Definitely. Mental health is very important, which even suicide is very important, but it gets kicked under the rug so much. And it's like people don't think it's a problem. Now, when you see 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 6-year-olds committing suicide, you mean to tell me there's not a we don't have a problem? Y'all really don't pay attention to that?
And why do you think people don't want to pay attention today? Because your experience was many years ago.
Many years ago,
and
yes.
Could you share that experience with us? What happened?
Okay.
How did it change your life?
Well, my life pretty much starts off with me being abandoned. And with my older brother found an apartment and placed in a foster home. My biological mother went back and got my older brother, but never came back and got me, which I'm glad she didn't, because Miss Price, who adopted me, loved me like I was her own. She really, took care of me and really gave me that comfort and comfortability and security that I really needed. Grew up in Compton, grew up living a street life. So when you grow up in Compton and you in the streets, you're part of the gang life, the gang world. So you in shootouts, you bring in drama where you rest your head, which is one thing you should never do when you live in that life. Whatever you do in the streets, it stays in the streets. When it trickles down and it follows you home where you rest your head, then there's an issue. Like, you're really out there doing too much.
Heavy, yeah.
Which I didn't get when I was younger, but as I got older, I realized it. And Miss Price's daughters had put me out, when I was 16. They asked me to leave. Miss Price had got sick, and they pretty much was in control of her house. So they put me out, no place to go but the streets. So, I lived pillar to post, hustle, grind, been on top of the world, fell off, many times from being involved with, criminal activity, grinding, doing things illegal, get a place to live, apartment, selling drugs out of it, get raided, now I'm back to, square one. So December the 31st, 1991, I really felt like there was no purpose for me to live. I was back homeless again, sleeping here and there on porches, garages, in front of people's houses, or wherever I could, at the time, and December the 31st, 1991, I actually took a gun and put it to my head, and I shot myself in the head. God spared my life,
Wow.
And it was a trip, because when I woke up in the hospital, I really felt disappointed that I woke up.
Really?
I felt like I failed, like I was pretty much a real failure in life. you know, because my whole purpose of doing that was not to be here.
Right.
And to wake up and I'm still here, feel like, you know, like I
Wow.
can't win for losing. And when I got out the hospital, I pretty much was living in the same situation, but now I have a bandage around my head and I'm still staying pillow to post or wherever I can. So living that life, one day I wake up and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not for me. This is not how I want to live. And I really thought on it and I made the decision that I want to get myself together. You know, people can give you all the advice in the world.
Right.
But until you decide, like, I want to do it on my own, then that's when it happened. And I did. I started, like in school, when I was in school, I always had a learning disorder. So I always had special ed classes, you know,
Right.
since elementary. So I never really knew how to spell, read, write, math, any of that. And that really used to tear me apart, you know, because Miss Price ended up letting me know later on, you know, I was born a crack baby, you know, so that is what caused my learning disability. And the schools would always say I would never amount to anything. And they used to tell Miss Price, well, I think he would be better off if you just get like SSI for him and just let him live off that for the rest of his life. That was the plan that they had, you know,
Right.
but it turned out different.
Not your plan.
Not my plan, you know, and that really used to crush me. And I started, I never played sports, you know, because I never really had nobody to get me into sports. But music was something that I always, you know, had a passion for and I wanted to do. And I wanted to share my life in a way that people can relate, because I knew I wasn't the only one that been through something and been through the things that I went through. So I would get beats from a friend of mine named Lee. And I couldn't spell, so I would write the word down, but I would write it down to where a person could look at it, they wouldn't understand it, but I knew what that word was, you know, by me reading it. Yeah.
You're
The way I
teaching
wrote
yourself
it,
how
I
to
was
read.
teaching myself, yes.
Exactly.
And we ended up recording, doing songs. And Leon Haywood, the great Leon Haywood, rest in peace, we took it, the music to him and let him hear it, and he loved it.
Awesome.
You know, and from that day forward, you know, he embraced me. That was in '93. He put me in the studio and just let us record. We recorded. Back then, it was, you know, music was coming out on cassette tapes and CDs still.
Oh, yeah.
93, 94, 95.
Oh, yeah.
So we put out a maxi single in '94 that did real good. But in '95, we actually put out an album self-titled Suicide. Suicide spelled with a C. Because I don't spell it with an S, I spell it with a C.
I understand. And
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, why do you spell it with a C instead of an S?
I mean, more like a lingo thing, you
Okay.
know? Yeah, you know, definitely. Yeah. Putting a twist on it.
Twist on it.
Yeah.
Your own twist on
My own twist on it.
it. That you survived a suicide.
That I survived the suicide, thanks to the man above. And we put out the album in '95, and I mean, it did amazing. You know, everybody wanted to hear it. Everybody, you know, they was buying it out the stores. It was selling out everywhere. And from that day forward, it showed me that I can be somebody, you know, because the schools always, you know, even the teachers, like I would be in a regular class and I couldn't keep up with the class. So it was one teacher, Mr. Butler, you know, he would see that I couldn't keep up with the class and, oh, go to Miss Brown. Miss Brown was the special ed teacher at Enterprise Junior High. And, you know, people would laugh, you know, like it was a joke, you know, and it really used to bother me, especially when you're the teacher. You're supposed to be trying to
Helping
help
you.
me. I'm
Exactly.
raising my hand for help, but, oh, well, go to Miss Brown. Okay, you, I guess I'm no concern to you when it comes to you doing your job as a teacher. So Miss Brown, though, she cared about me. She really used to try to help me. So she would help me, you know what I mean? She would have these options like spelling tests. You know, if you spell all these words right, then you could pick something, you know, off the shelf in her classroom. And she would have model cars, and I was into model cars, putting model cars together.
Wow.
So I was studying, you know, I remember sometimes people used to say, if, you know, whatever you go to sleep thinking about, when you wake up, it'll be on your mind. So I would go to sleep with those spelling words on my mind.
Oh,
You
wow,
know?
that's great. And she believed in you.
Yeah, She really did. She really believed in me and really cared and would sit side by side with me and help me, you know, with math, spelling, reading. And it got to the point to where one day I actually got a dictionary, you know, and I was like, I want to learn how to read. So I was thinking like, what would be the best thing I could learn how to read than just a regular book? I got a dictionary. Now I'm actually learning the word, but at the same time, I'm learning the meaning. So when I use that word, I actually know what it means at the same time. And from there, you know, after, like I said, when I got out the hospital, I was still living that same life. Leon Haywood ended up becoming a godfather to me, embraced me, taught me the music industry from contracts to the good and the bad, you know, about the music industry. And from there, my music, I really fell in love with making that music because it was uplifting people. And not only was it uplifting people in the States, but it was uplifting people in other countries. And then when the internet came around, that's when people would reach out to me, you know, and tell me how my music, you know, makes them feel, how they listen to it. And I mean, they're in France, London, Switzerland, Germany, Australia, Japan, and I ended up touring over there.
Yeah.
So that music is something that, you know, I stuck with, like, well, this is what I need to be doing. And it's really working. But what I learned, the music is amazing, the message is powerful, but there's nothing more powerful and more stronger than sharing your message and your story in a physical form, where they're actually in that room with you. It warms the room up. It's a deeper feeling.
That human connection. And you yourself are a fathers and a grandfather. So when you came to that journey in your life, becoming a parent and having, I don't know, how many children do you have?
4.
4. And how many grandchildren?
5.
5. So there are 9. The next generation is right there in front of you.
Yes.
How have you supported their awareness and their support for emotional, positive well-being?
Well, they go off, my kids, they go off of what I've been through. You know, they know my life story, which I didn't tell them until they got older. So when they were younger, they used to always, you know, ask me about, you know, the scar. And I fell off a bike. I would tell them anything, you know, because I never wanted to discourage them, you know, when they were younger. And growing up, when I was first started having kids, I was still heavy in the street life. So I could definitely admit I wasn't the best father in the world, but I never had a person to teach me how to be a father. I only had people to teach me how to survive in the streets, how to go to war if you have to, how to survive if you need to make money and you can't get a job. So, you know, even with my son, I made my son a promise. Like, my son used to be with me every weekend. But I know for sure I wasn't the greatest father, even with my 2 oldest daughters, but me and their mom didn't get along. So it was like, I don't know, it's like she held a grudge or something against me, which I wanted to be in their life, but she kept them from me. And as they got older, I was able to see them. But there come times where they will lash out and be like, well, you wasn't in our life anyway. And at that point, it wasn't my fault, you know? But with my son and my younger daughter, Anaya, been in her life, you know what I mean, all her life, been in my son's life all his life. But as he was growing up, instead of doing the family thing, I was more, it's like the hood had control of me. Like, I would rather be in the neighborhood doing street things instead of doing family things. And I didn't understand that and realize that until I got older. And I definitely made my son a promise. I may not have been the greatest father, but I promise you one thing, whatever you feel like I didn't do, I give you my word on the last beat in my heart that I will make it up through your kids. And that's what I do.
That's wonderful. And so you said people have a hard time talking about all these issues. And you're so open about those issues. So how can we get more people to talk about it? You know, either, like you said, particularly about suicide, which people think, you know, when they saw a famous person like Anthony Bourdain kill himself. And
Robin Williams.
We've talked about Twitch, all these famous people who had a face out there.
Yes.
Why is there so much denial? Is it cultural? Is it like we don't? What do you think it is?
Well, when you're young, you're taught, especially as a male, never express emotions. You're weak when you do that. You're soft. You tell a person how you feel, you weak. And that's how I felt. You know what I mean? Like, who I was in the streets is like, how I'm gonna come tell my OGs, like, I'm thinking about killing myself. How the shooter thinking about shooting himself. And it kind of like felt embarrassing because I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. It's like, who do I talk to that can relate to me?
Exactly.
And that's what made me, really start pushing so hard for it, because me seeing how people listen to my music, and I'm like, I got something. And I got something that's working. So I started getting inviting out to like Kevin Cause is a young gentleman that committed suicide. And his family reached out to me, and I would go speak every year at the Kevin Cause Walk and Run that they have in October. And one year I went and spoke. It was a gentleman there that was the fire department, paramedic. And when he heard me speak, he came up to me afterwards and said, I remember that day. I was the guy that came out to that call.
When you shot yourself?
Yes, when I shot myself, I promise. He was the gentleman that came, and he was younger. And he came, he said, I remember you. I came on that call that day. And he was blown away, like, wow.
Because he never knew what happened.
He never knew what happened. And then there was
So he's part of your story.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he was there helping
Muhammad,
you.
he's a part of my story for sure. And he has his own paramedics in Compton as well. And then there was like hotlines there. And another reason what made me really get into going out there, because I give out my own personal cell phone number and I get phone calls. I've talked many people off the ledge. And what made me start doing that, a couple of the organizations like suicide hotlines that was there at the Kevin Cause, shook hands with them, talked to them. You know what, I'm gonna see if I can volunteer. I wanted to volunteer and speak on the phone. They was like, well, that's a good thing, but we would have to train you how to talk on the phone. I said, train me? Like, yeah, then you would have to do like 4 sessions, and each session would be $150 each. I said, I don't think I need training. I feel like I'm a professional. I said, have you ever considered suicide? Oh, definitely not. Never considered that. I'm a college grad from this. I got degrees in all of this. I said, so, yeah. I said, so how do you relate and understand when they're actually talking to you? I get it. I understand. So I said, okay, no problem. And I also contacted the news before. And hey, how you doing? I'm D. Price. I'm a suicide survivor. Now I'm an activist for suicide awareness prevention, trying to find out how can I get my story out there to pretty much help save a life. I know I can't save the world, but if I can save one person,
exactly,
my mission is accomplished. Oh, well, to us, it's actually not news until after it happens.
They only want to cover the dead people.
Yeah, they only want to cover the dead. I said, so life means nothing to you? You only want to cover the dead? What about life? I said, if I was standing in front of you right now, like, I would do something, And I really stood and meant that. So that's what made me, every time I would do an interview, I would give out my cell phone number. And I get phone calls right now to this day. I get phone calls. And I have a podcast as well, but people would call me. And what I've learned, who do you open up to? You open up to somebody that's walked in your shoes.
Exactly.
That's what get them comfortable. Now it's like, okay, I can relate to him. He understands. Because I really know what it feels like to say, I don't want to live. I want to die. And attempted it, but God was like, I got a job for you.
Exactly.
And I signed up for it, and I live by it, and I stand on it. And I have a podcast on No Jumper based on mental health. It's called OG Suicide in the Building. And how it started, my nephew AD also has a podcast. At the end of the day, what's the name of his podcast? So every Tuesday, I would go up to No Jumper, and him, Adam, AD, House Phone, they would be on their show. And when I walk in, they would see me. They would OG Suicide in the building, and for about a year and a half, that was a saying every Tuesday, which became like,
That's great.
You know what I mean? It caught the attention of the audience. Then everybody wanted to put a face with the name.
Yeah.
So Adam had was like, man, AD told me so much about you. I know there's a story there. So we did a story. He interviewed me. The same day it came out, then he reached out to me and said, I like what you're doing. Let's figure out a way you can continue to help people. And he was like, hey, you ever thought about a podcast? And I'm like, a podcast? Like, nah, I don't really want to do interviews, you know? And I own a magazine too, One West Magazine, but I always had staff that does the interviews. I never felt like I wanted to be the person to do the interviews, and it fell in my lap. And my first episode was with Adam, then with AD, then with the House Phone. And them interviews was amazing. My first one with Adam, I really didn't have no direction. You know, I didn't write no questions down or anything. I've always been a person that just speak from the heart. Whatever's on the heart is gonna be on the mind. And I did the interview with Adam, then with AD. Then the one with House Phone, you know, it was special because his mom had just passed. And a lot of the staff that was in the office, I've always been good at reading people. You know, before I knew how to read books, I could read people. And I don't know, it's like a gift. And if I say something or speak on something, it always turn out that way. When I tell people, they'd be like, oh, he don't know what he's talking about. But then they'll come back and be like, man, you was right, like word for word. So I interviewed House Phone, and you know, we just was talking about his life in general, of him getting his life together, and his mom had just passed. And I could tell he had so much just built up on the inside of him. And we started talking, and I started asking questions, and then I started asking deeper questions, and it got to the point to where that right question, he opened up, you know, and he teared up and he let it out. And that's where I have a saying also, let it out, loved one, because he felt comfortable. He knew on his show, they do drama. They do totally opposite. How many ops you got? How many it is? I don't do that on my show. I don't do drama. You know, I don't care what you done in the streets, but I want to know where you came from, what life you come from. How were you when you was growing up? Did you have two parents in the same household? Was you cool with your mom? Was you cool with your dad? And I take that life that they lived, and I look at it like, you're successful now. But before you became successful, how was your life? What did you go through to become successful? And we talked about that, and then, like I said, he let it out, loved one. That's the saying. And you know, that's the thing about me. When I interview people, they're gonna feel comfortable. You know, China Mac, another one. China Mac is, you know, from New York, really like a stand on street dude. You know, like nobody expected him to see him, you know, tear up the way he did. But it's like, never be embarrassed to share your emotions. I cry to this day. You know, Miss Price, her birthday's coming up June 10th. That's like one of my most emotional days. You know,
she was so important in your
so
life.
important to me, and she passed in '92, and I miss her still.
Of course. And you know, those essential people who are raising you as parents are so important in your life if you've had a positive journey, and to remember them in a way to get in touch, because you know, it's very interesting because most people think about suicide that somebody is dead, so there's nobody to talk to. It happened.
Yes.
It's over with. Now we're mourning it. We're trying to understand it. The people closest to them might feel guilty. They feel like, why didn't I know? Why didn't I stop it? What should I have done? And for parents, if it's their own child, they're like rolling that back. What did I do 5 years ago?
Where did I go wrong?
Where did I go wrong, et cetera?
Yes.
And you might have not done anything wrong. And
Nothing.
you may have never been able to stop it. but it puts you in this position to question. The
Yes.
fact that you survived, you should change your name to OG Survivor, survived the suicide, you know,
Yes.
in the sense that you can talk about it. Because so many people who talk about suicide say, I don't know why I wanted to kill myself. They can say my life was really crummy, and maybe that's part of it. But at that moment, many people don't have clear awareness.
They don't.
And so parents and youth who are suicidal call the California Parent and Youth Helpline. We deal that every day. And I say, a life saved today? Fantastic. We had a mom who was holding a knife in one hand. Her 2-year-old is in her other hand. She wanted to commit suicide, but she called us. And that action alone, and the first thing we say on the helpline is, thank you for calling California Parent. And we pause.
Yes.
Because I said from the very beginning, we have to acknowledge the strength the person had to pick up the phone and talk to a stranger, not know anything about them, and say, am I going to be accepted? Is somebody going to listen to me? And if it doesn't happen, they're going to hang up.
Yes.
And so our first role is to affirm that you did something positive.
Yes.
Because we go through life where we're getting knocked down over all this stuff. Don't do that. Don't do this. Why did you do that? And the way the school treated you, I mean, we'll just like let's erase him. He's invisible to us. And we as parents, and you as a grandparent now, we're watching what the school's doing, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're in there.
Faithfully.
And if you think that anybody's doing anything to erase your grandchild,
I'm questioning it.
you're going to question it, and you're going to be there.
Yes.
And you're teaching your children that you survived something, but what did you learn from it? That is so powerful. So in Parents Anonymous, we talked about lived expertise. Lived experience is me driving a car.
Yes.
Lived expertise is something deeply emotional that I experienced, that I lived through, and I have something to talk about it. And we want to value that, not say, oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, this and that. All these people have stories. And so sometimes, because people don't want to hear about suicide with young children, they just block it out.
Yes.
You know, okay, well, that's some famous person who killed themselves, so what? Or that's some famous rapper who killed himself, or whatever. That's not in my family. It's
Money
like
don't make you happy.
Right. And so like gun violence, oh, it's never going to happen here. And now there are school shootings every single week in America.
Yes.
Small, little, isolated Christian school. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
You know, people always said, oh, if you look at the gun violence in the schools, it is not centered in the urban centers of America.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
It's like the Columbine killing, you know, in Colorado. Oh, the news kept saying, well, they lived in a $750,000 house. I don't remember the amount. I'm like, well, who cares? These young men were extremely troubled.
Yes.
And they had evidence of this trouble all along, and people have blinders on it because they went back. They do sometimes a suicide autopsy. Have you heard of this? Mm-hmm. Either of you?
No.
Where they try to go back in the person's life and figure out what were all these touch points where they were seeking help, or somebody was ignoring them, or they, you know, were doing behaviors that didn't seem rational or safe. Why didn't anybody do anything, or did anybody know about it? To try to figure out were there touch points that the suicide could have been prevented.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do a lot of them, but for families, it's like a whole process for them to go through. But to be in denial, that's what the stigma is about. The stigma forces people to be in denial.
A lot of people are in denial.
And when you go to seek help, how do they treat you? When you went to the hospital, how do they treat you? You're a 22-year-old kid?
Yep, 22. You
22,
hit the hammer on the nail.
They could tell you tried to kill yourself.
Yes.
Right? There was no question, right? And did they want to put you in a psych ward?
Augustine Hawkins in Compton. Medication.
Okay.
Was a thing that they wanted me on that I had to take. It was mandatory. It had to show up in my urine when I go see a psychiatrist. That stuff had me want to kill myself.
Even more.
Even more. I was more depressed and stressed from it. And then I would go see a psychiatrist and, okay, I'm sitting here and I'm telling you my story. We're talking, but we don't ever mention no treatment or no courses I could take or nothing. Then at the end of the conversation, well, I'm going to prescribe you this and you take these and I'll see you next week. I stopped taking it. I stopped seeing the psychiatrist. Everybody's different. What I did, I'm not saying I work for everyone.
Right.
I'm not saying medication that people don't need it. Some people do. But for me in particular, I stopped taking it. I started feeling better. I started wanting to live life. The medication had me not wanting to live anymore. It wanted me to like, well, let me try again. Maybe if I put it on this side.
And if you had told the psychiatrist that you were, did you tell the psychiatrist that you were suicidal?
Oh, you are? Okay, well.
I'll give you another prescription.
We're gonna lighten up the dosage a little bit. How about I don't take that stuff anymore? So I stopped. I stopped going to see the psychiatrist.
Well, we know from studies that psychotropic drugs, especially around depression, they say on the box, potential suicide. So they're taking it because they're depressed, but there's this, and if people aren't monitored or helped, and everybody doesn't react well to medication.
Yeah, and I didn't, and I left it alone, and I got better. And I said, you know what? Let me get out and start sharing my life story. And it started helping. You know, right now to this day, I have so many people that reach out to me, and
that's wonderful.
All ages. You know, when you got kids, 12 and 13-year-olds reaching out to you and telling you, you inspire them. You encourage me to want to live. I watch your show every week. All walks of life, all nationalities. You know, because me, what I do for suicide awareness and prevention, I tell people all the time, because some people be like, oh man, that's a good thing you're doing for the black culture. I said, no, correct yourself. I'm doing this for all cultures.
For all humanity.
I'm doing this for all walks of life. I'm colorblind. Everybody's human to me.
Exactly.
You know, that means nothing to me. I want to see everybody live. And if I can give advice and they take it in and it works for them, I'm happy, and it does. And they see they can relate to me, I can relate to them. So that's what make them contact me, and they open up. But man, can I call you? Because I don't want to talk to my family. Because most of the time when people, oh man, I want to kill myself, instead of a family member hearing that cry for help, they get on the phone and, oh, this fool over here talking about killing himself. I don't know what's wrong with him. He must be crazy. That was a cry for help. Then when it happened, now you're devastated. Oh, he just told me the other day. Yeah, and you didn't sit him down and have a conversation with him. You know?
Why do you think people don't want to have that conversation? When somebody says right to their face, I'm thinking of killing myself.
I feel like some people don't know what to say. They don't understand it. Just like we have a lot of people every day that's depressed and don't know it.
Right.
That's under a lot of stress and don't know it. And then you also have people that not every situation that a person is going through, they should consider suicide. But when a person, just like when the pandemic happened and people was losing homes and panic mode, they go into panic mode and it's like, what do I do? You know, they stiffen up and they can't think of nothing. So they feel like this is my way out of everything, when it's not. Because if you don't panic and you really stay focused, then you can think better. You really have to sit down and take a deep breath and really look at your life. Because the good things you had in life, you lost, but you can get those good things again. Because if you had it once, you can get it again.
Right.
But it's a matter of you gaining that belief in yourself again, like you believed in yourself before. And people lose that. And one thing that I'm definitely doing and standing on is being the face of never give up, because I understand it. Like I said, I've talked many people off the ledge, and then they'll call me. Some of them, I'll call them and check on them just to see how they doing, and they be blown away. I have like 7,000 contacts in my phone, and a lot of people that have reached out to me in the past, holidays. That's the time I learned I used to be emotionally stressed out, homeless. I'm seeing people with their families, didn't have that, was living out in the streets. And
so you've created a whole community, and we were talking about, Mike and I, about how supportive community, positive community is so important. Even if people don't know what to do, having a listening ear
is important.
You know, it's so important. And that's why, when we went to the governor I went to the governor during the lockdown, I said, now you need to do what we've been talking about for a long time. And don't leave parents on the side of the road, because they're the heroes of the coronavirus. They're the ones locked up at home with all these kids, schools closed. Nobody knows where they're going, and parents are 24/7 now. The school, the recreation, the teenagers want to run away. Grandma cannot come over, and the special ed consultant can't come. Nobody can come into my house.
Yes.
And you're telling me I should have Wi-Fi and all this, and I'm not letting strangers in. And we don't have broadband in America. I mean, people didn't even think what the pressure cooker was for the parents like you and the grandparents like you.
Yes.
My kids are all grown, so they were not living with me during the coronavirus. What that pressure was about. But the fact that when you open yourself up about your experiences and say, I hear you, I felt that way before, because people want to be acknowledged. We all want to be acknowledged.
Yes.
Because loneliness and depression comes from feeling like you're the only one with this problem. Whether you're a parent struggling with a kid or you yourself have a mental health problem as a parent, we want you to call. So the message is always call, reach out. Anybody in your universe, you can send them to the California Parent and Youth Helpline.
Definitely.
And they can call it, text it, chat it, and they can encourage other people. And that's what we believe in Parents Anonymous. It's the gift that keeps on giving. The person who puts himself out there, comes to group and said, I've been there where you are.
Yes.
I've been clean a year. You're on your journey. Here's where I've been. I've struggled with my kid. My kid was put in foster care, or my kid was arrested by the cops. All these experiences. So parents feel like I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. And look at, we were talking about wins before, any kind of win, and then I can make change. And that community is so precious. Because strangers come together in Parents Anonymous. They don't know each other. They come from all walks of life.
That's
in California, they can come from anywhere in California.
I definitely would love to come visit.
And they can come to this group free, online.
That's good.
Accessible, so you don't have to worry about gas prices. You don't have to worry about where am I going to put my kid. As long as they're safe, You want to go to group on your cell phone, it's fine, as long as you're alone.
That's
that we can protect the confidentiality of everybody else.
Yes.
But the journey, and what I've heard in my 31 years as president of Parents Anonymous is incredible stories of hope and change and generations of transformation.
Yes.
How the young people of these parents who even went to Parents Anonymous as a young person, because we have youth groups, are now leaving the cards in bathrooms, and parents are coming to parents and saying, literally a month ago, my son didn't kill himself because he said he found the card your son put in the bathroom, and he went home and called that number. And the mother is like crying, and then she tells the son who's crying and saying, I didn't know I made that kind of impact. So we know about personal community, right? We want to build that all the time. But there's other community.
Yes.
People listen to your podcast, maybe they never call you again, but you affected them. Your music. We were talking about how music can fill the soul.
Music is medicine.
Music is medicine. I can't create it, but I love it. I sing off tune. It still helps me. And I tell everybody, dance, move, sing, hug, laugh, smile. All these things are for our well-being.
Yes.
So
they're all forms of communication. They're all forms of expression.
Exactly.
I think that's the beauty. I think that's the underlying theme. I said community before, but we had Amina, we had John, now we have OG. All of them, he found through expression, he was able to get it out. And once he created his community, now people, I may not be able to rap over beats, right? But if I can create community and talk to somebody and express what I'm going through Parents Anonymous, it's heavy and as much as a win as going and putting the track out that made it to Germany, to Japan.
Family. Yes.
It doesn't all have to be on a grand scale. It can touch one person. And by saving himself in the process, like the parent put on his mask, now I can take care of my kids. He has a bunch of people that listen to him and that can now gain from him as well. And now I didn't, like you said, I found the card in the bathroom, and I'm saying it's the same thing, and it's all through expression. I think the underlying theme here is expression. In our community, say what you need to say, get it out, find a way, find a outlet. It may not be on, No Jumper. It may not be on SoundCloud. It may not be on the football field, but it may be through this hotline, which I think is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
And I think that keep asking for help, I say to people. We say asking for help is the sign of strength, but the first person you might reach out to may be the one that gets on the phone and says a negative comment. And you might need to go to the next person, the next person, and keep trying till you find what works. Medication didn't work for you. The psychiatrist wasn't even listening to you. Okay, you found a path through music. I mean, if you hadn't found that path in music, maybe it would have been a different direction for you. And you had talent in music. Okay, some people don't have talent. Maybe they have talent in building things. You know,
Yes.
you talked
Everyone
about
has
model
a talent.
car-
They just have to
model-
figure out what it is.
And we talk about building on your
Yes.
personal strengths. So we're here to support your empowerment journey. I don't own your power, so I can't control it. It's your journey, but I'm here to support you.
Mandatory.
So thank you for a wonderful podcast
problem.
today, and thank
No
you for
problem.
giving up so much of your time to the
Yes, it's
millions
important.
of people who hear
It's
your
important.
music, who come on your podcast, and that you respond to people. Because a lot of
Mandatory.
people wouldn't give out their phone number.
And I do. And I've been had this number 17 years. And
Awesome.
another thing, a lot of our young people are heavy into drugs because of who they're influenced by, especially the music world. You know, a lot of cats that's in the music world speak highly on how drugs are so amazing. And then they're
Self-medicating.
influenced. Our youth is influenced. Now they're using drugs. Over the last 3 months, I've talked so many young people into going to rehab. You know, that they families couldn't get them to go, but having a real conversation with me, and they went and they did that, and it just feels good. But one thing I really that really bothers me is you got all these entertainers that influence our young people to destroy themselves, but their kids are in colleges, they go to private schools,
Oh, yeah.
they're living an amazing life, they're nowhere around that. So I really feel like something should be done in that matter. And another thing, a question that I want to ask is, like, depression, you know, like and genetics, like high blood pressure, you know, is in the genetics, it'll run through your family, heart disease. And I'm wondering, like, when people go through depression prior to having kids, does that depression become a genetic in your child by you being, you know what I mean, stressed out and depressed,
Well,
and then you have
yeah.
kids? Does that also transfers over? Because you got a lot of young kids as well. They say it's hypertension, and then they put them on medication, and they grew up on it all their life. So sometimes I wonder that as well.
Well, what we talk about, what we do know is that there are 10 to 13 adverse childhood experiences.
Okay.
And those contribute to every mental health, physical problem, and risky behavior we have. So that's abuse and neglect. That is being removed from your family by being in foster home, your parents getting divorced, somebody who's raising you goes to prison,
Yep.
domestic violence in the home, or
Yes.
mental health. Those 10 things,
Definitely
if you
those.
have 4 or more, you're at greater risk for suicide, heart disease, liver disease, smoking, and you name it. So there's 30 years of research. So the question is, in Parents Anonymous, we teach the parents, whether or not you have 4, 5, or 10, all ACEs, how can you become aware so you can change your life? So it's not so much about the genetics, but what they studied was that these childhood traumas set something in motion. We don't know if it's genetic or situational, that we can turn around. And so our research in Parents Anonymous shows that no matter how many ACEs the parents have, that the kids flourish as a result of the parents developing what we call protective factors.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So that's removing yourself from a violent relationship.
Yes.
That is stopping using drugs and alcohol, which Parents Anonymous has shown to promote sobriety. Okay? As well as changing your behaviors as a parent and doing more self-care. All those positive things that we call protective factors, if they go up, your children's flourish. And during the pandemic, I was shocked because we had groups online, mostly for the parents, because the kids were in school at all these weird hours around the state. They couldn't get on. And we saw the child flourishing index go up as a result of the parents. So I say the future depends on parents and working with parents and supporting parents, whatever their struggle or not struggle. They have a child who's depressed, a child who's failing in school, and the school's not listening to them, and they switch schools, and it's still a bad situation.
Yes.
There's a bully, and they lose their job,
Especially the
or
bullying.
their housing is, they live in a violent neighborhood, but they can't get out of there. I mean, there's a million things that go on that create the family environment.
Just like kids get bullied at home and then go to school and take it out on somebody else. So
and 20
definitely-
years ago, they didn't even use the word bully at school.
No,
No.
no.
When I went to school, I knew who the bullies were, but
Yeah.
nobody said that word bully.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes the schools I know schools that 10 years ago used to say to the parent, the child is getting bullied, let's say you're dad of the child, they say, you know what, your child needs some therapy. And the parent came to me and the parent went back to the principal and said, you need to deal with the bully. And stop telling me to give my child therapy. My child needs therapy because you did nothing about the bully.
Oh, well, what did your child do to make them mad? What did my child do to make them mad?
So
do you hear what you're saying?
People are looking for a lot of blame and shame. Like, why are you sad? Your life is really good. People brush off depression that way. You look at it, you live in a nice house, you got 2 parents, what are you depressed? You know, or we don't want to talk about it in our family because, you know, grandma was depressed, but nobody talked about grandma, right? So-and-so was drinking all the time, but nobody said anything. So all those things need to come up. And I think the more we talk and support people, not
let it
just
out, love
talk,
one. Yes.
and give that love and support.
Mandatory.
That's the future.
Mandatory.
Thank you.
Love
Awesome.
one.
I rang, man.
Beautiful ring.